Hey, welcome to episode 6. God is not allowed in the lab. It's an excerpt from The Arrogance of Religious Thought, and away we go. God never shows up in the laboratory. When we really examine the world as it is, systematically observe it, right? There's no gods to be found anywhere. Even the devout tacitly acknowledge that fact. They know better. Quote, "It's pretty ridiculous that as soon as we put the fence of empirical discovery around a piece of God's creation, he's locked out. When we engage the world as we find ourselves in it, when we find no God. And even if we believe in one, he doesn't ever show up in the lab, and we don't let him in. Think about it. Why not?" End quote. Why do even the most devout Christian scientists not pray in the laboratory or expect a miracle to occur overnight, so their experiment will have worked the next morning, right? What's so special about lab doors and walls that even hardcore believers know God can't get in? He made every square inch of his creation, didn't he? The Red Sea parted at his whim, bushes burned, the dead rose, or at least they used to. The locusts descended, right? He used to turn water into wine, a purely chemical trick, so why don't we pray to God to make our solution precipitate, or why don't we pray for him to make that complex pharmaceutical molecule we've been trying to synthesize for years as a new medicine, right? Why don't we just expect him to make it happen and appear out of thin air, right? Instead of painstakingly working, sometimes years in the lab, to make that molecule, right? Just as a little aside, the water into wine trick, the wedding at Cana, only shows up in one gospel, the Gospel of John, probably the last one written, maybe after 100 AD, when the others were written 70 to 90 AD. The epistles of Paul, the other epistle writers, the other gospel writers, nobody in the New Testament knows anything about the wedding at Cana and turning water into wine. Sounds like embellished myth, doesn't it? John just made that one up, like the other ones made the other ones up previous to him. But we'll have an episode on that later. Anyways, so why don't even Christian scientists who happen to be Christians, pray in the lab or expect a miracle to occur? No, they work painstakingly to make their chemistry work. Why? Because they know better. Even believers know better. And that's what they know about how the world really works. It would be a breeze for the creator of the universe to rearrange just a tiny few of all the bazillions of molecules he fucking made, right? But it never happens. Not in the lab. He never shows up in the lab or in any science endeavor. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? That here we are desperately trying to develop a treatment to end the suffering or save a life from some fucking ugly disease that he made for us, if you're a believer, like COVID or maybe polio, right? Couldn't you have just skipped one of those, God? Did you really need to make those diseases too? Couldn't you have just skipped a couple of them? Like, how about the plague? Killed maybe 200 million people out of the 100 billion people that have ever lived since humans, Homo sapiens, have been around about 300,000 years, right? How about smallpox? Maybe 1 billion people have died from smallpox since around 2000 BC, when we first have some evidence that that virus was around. Did we really need those viruses? Okay. Every scientist, even believing ones, have enough experience in the world to know prayer doesn't work in the lab. Miracles don't happen. God is not allowed in. They know better. Another great example for that matter. Why don't we pray for God, any God, to reattach an amputated limb, or better yet, regrow one miraculously overnight? Right? Why does our omnipotent God seem so impotent with basic science projects and medical repairs that we can see? Right? There's a whole website dedicated to that question, and it's linked below in the description. Believers will pray for a remission of cancers that are hidden inside, or, fix my heart disease or something. But why don't we pray for him to arrange complex molecules that we can't see either to make our next miracle drug? Why? Because we know better. It never works that way. We all know better. Even Christians know better, scientists or not. They don't pray for a new finger. They don't pray for a paltry fingertip. They know deep down it's all bullshit. How about an earlobe? Surely the master of the universe, the supreme intelligence who just had to be behind the Big Bang, creating all matter and energy, all our worlds, the stars, the galaxies, every atom, every molecule, the land and plants and animals, surely a few measly earlobe cells would be a snore for him, right? But we know better. So even the most godly of Christians don't pray for a new earlobe if they cut their earlobe up, or a measly fingertip to grow back if they cut it off in an industrial accident. No, they go see a plastic surgeon. Fact is, we all know better. Think of it if you believe, but you are also a scientist. You limit your omnipotent God's meanderings and heavenly influence to everywhere but in your lab, anybody's lab, all labs. You know it doesn't work, you know he won't show up. Deep down, I think everybody knows it's bullshit, but cultural inertia makes us retell the story that he raised the dead, turned water into wine, prayer works, and maybe he snuck in a few miracles for a saint now and then, but most of them were all way back then, not now, never any miracles now, and certainly not in the lab, any lab, not ever. We pay lip service to the scam that miracles occurred once long ago, but we really know better. And we betray that knowledge when we don't let God in the lab. Or never pray for a new earlobe. Think about it. Maybe there's about, 5,000 square feet, 100 by 50 foot in the average lab room. What's so special about that lab space? Before, let's say, a high-rise research building was built, and the space that the lab now occupies was just clear blue sky before, right? God could look down into it and make the birdies sing or whip up one of his rainbows here and there, maybe answer that odd prayer now and then against that the Christians will tell you about. But now that there's lab walls around that piece of sky, God ain't allowed in no more. He's locked out. Ludicrous, ain't it? Labs are off limits to God, any God, all gods. Even when a scientist is so sure they're uncovering the glory of their God and his handiwork through, his creation through their science, they don't let him interfere. He's not a factor. He's not a variable. He has no influence whatsoever. He's ignored. So there's no gods in the lab, and even scientists who happen to still be believers of some kind, they know better. They got to do the hard work to make things happen. Absolutely. So that is an excerpt from one chapter in The Arrogance of Religious Thought. It's linked on Amazon, up on the banner on my YouTube channel. Support us on Patreon if you can. Please hit that subscribe button. Check out stuff like all the bumper stickers and T-shirts and all other good things on the Dunn store. And we'll see you next time. Have a great one. Adios.